Hey everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, so we're going to go over today a sample of student writing that's a really good sample for Project 3. But before we get into that, I wanted to say some stuff to my kids. So first of all, I'm sorry about confusion with the discussion board from 4-3, I think is the day. So if you did that discussion board, what's going to happen is you're either going to have a previous discussion board that you didn't do dropped, or if you don't have any that need to be dropped, I'll just count this discussion board as 200 points, which will boost your participation grade. For those of you who didn't do the discussion board, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's just going to be dropped. That was because I forgot to tell you guys that you had to do it, and that's my fault. But that's how that's going to work. So it's not exactly extra credit, but it's sort of kind of extra credit if you did it. With that being said, the rest of the discussion boards for the rest of the semester are mandatory. That you got to turn them in. If you don't turn them in, it's going to hurt your participation grade. Secondly, Project 2 grades are in. So you can do the next discussion board that's due on the 11th. It originally says it's due on 4/7. Just ignore that. It's due on the 11th. As long as you get it in by midnight on the 11th, then you'll get credit. That's the one where I want you to respond to my feedback from Project 1 and from Project 2. So to get to your feedback from Project 2, I'm just going to show you real quick. When you're in Blackboard, if I can get to Blackboard, I'm in Jonathan's because I don't have a grade book. You log into Blackboard and you go to this top right screen where your name is, click this little drop down arrow, and it's this one, the little piece of paper with a check on it. That's your grade book. So when you click on that, you'll see our course in there, and you'll be able to find the Project 2 feedback that way. You have to do that with a computer. The Blackboard app will not show you feedback for whatever reason. So if you're trying to find it on the app and you can't, that's why. Also, I'm going to have a extra credit opportunity. I'm going to talk about that sometime next week because I haven't actually got it down on paper yet. But there will be another extra credit opportunity coming up soon. I think that's it.
All right, and for my students, your extra credit opportunity is still available. I'll keep that going for, what is today, the 9th? For another 2 weeks-ish before it gets hectic for me to have to turn in my own stuff and then grade your stuff. So what we're going to kind of do today is Sarah did not have access to an example paper that she had from last semester, but I do, from one of my, one of the students that I was really proud of with this one. So it's on Louvre. It's a little bit more Louvre focused, nature principle focused in a way than, say, what we're having you all do because, different circumstances. I had a lot more time to spend face to face with them. But anyway, so this is an extreme example. He went above and beyond. All right. So bless you, sweetheart. Bless you.
Sorry. I have the COVID.
No, don't even joke.
I'm kidding.
Oh, and if you notice a change in scenery, we're
at the beach.
We have retreated down to an island. Come join us if you can find us.
Yes.
But anyway, so this paper was specifically about, I talked a lot about it in my classes. I would have talked about it a lot with you all and maybe even with Sarah's class if she had wanted me to. There was a big debate among the graduate assistants about the way that Richard Louv portrayed video games. And I mean, technology in general, you've read at least, hopefully, some of the book. I know my students have read at least some because they took quizzes on it. But, it's one of those things where he can be a little bit crotchety old man in places, and they especially felt like that with video games, he just took it to task. So I think, if I remember correctly, it's specifically that part really early on where they talk about how, kids that spend more time outdoors tend to live longer in battlefield conditions in Iraq and Afghanistan. I forget the exact story there, but I know that basically if you grew up in an inner city where there was a lot of gang activity, or you grew up like a farmer's kid that was hunting a lot, then you stood a better chance of survival, I think was basically the gist. But anyway, so I had several students, and several of the faculty also got really into this because there were a lot of gamers, hardcore gamers. But basically they took Louv to task and went about trying to show ways that, in fact, video games are beneficial to human activity, whatever. Okay, so This next part is just for my classes. All right, Sarah's classes, you guys have already done your APA style. To my class, and I will state this again, and I will keep reminding you, the following paper is in APA format.
This sample paper, he means.
This sample
the sample
paper
that we are about to show you is in APA format.
Yeah. So essentially, we did not get to go through the APA format process because that was supposed to be this time. It's a lot to do on your own.
Yes.
Normally, I spend an entire class formatting a paper with all of you bringing in your laptops, and we do it together. That way, you're all set to go. Okay, so that being said, don't freak out. If you don't want to write it in APA, you don't have to. Okay? But I will be offering 5 points extra credit on the paper if you do write it in APA format. And the formatting on this paper is perfect. All right? So if you follow this format...
This is old APA.
I'm okay with old APA.
Okay.
As long as I can check off the box. I don't care.
Okay.
At this point.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, it's not the current version of APA, which is new by 3 months, 6 months,
something like that. Yeah.
So it's okay. The new one is not that different.
It is pretty different.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, whatever. If you want to attempt it, 5 points extra credit for anybody who attempts the APA formatting. And by that, you'll notice the difference. There's a running head, the title page, the abstract, and then references instead of a works cited, and the in-text citations are slightly different. All right? So
that does not apply to my students.
Right.
I'm not giving you extra credit, and you don't need to do APA. You've already done your APA and suffered. Just do the MLA because it's way easier.
And same with my class. If you would rather not do it, just do the MLA. You know I'm going to grade gently on this one anyway. You can't apply the extra credit to anything else. So it's just 5 points extra on the paper if you actually legitimately try APA. And if you have questions, email me. Okay, so moving forward from that. We're not going to go through the whole paper. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. By no means is this a perfect paper, all right? It's better than some of the stuff we get in pirate papers, but...
way better.
By a lot. His formatting is great. I think my main ding on this, because I looked at this, I gave this a solid A. And I'm, to Sarah's class, sorry, I'm a little more gentle.
Yeah, he's a little more generous, but don't freak out. I'm still nice.
So, anyway, the things I had that I kind of commented on, he gets a little conversational in places, which, as you know, is not really something you really want to see in academic writing, especially outside of reflection or something. The second thing he does is once in a while he'll use a phrase or he'll choose a word that I think is a little not academic, and so I dinged him a little for that. But for the most part, it's well organized, it's well thought out, and the evidence is real strong. Yeah. So.
And we're not going to go through, like he said, we're not going to go through this entire paper. Neither of us are on our A game right this minute. We're both very tired. So we're just going to kind of highlight these good things, but we're also going to post this on Blackboard so you can go back and look at this paper more thoroughly if you are so inclined, especially for Mr. Willett's kids who might decide to do APA. This would be a really good model to follow because the student really does have... It's basically perfect APA.
Well, like I said, we would spend a day doing it in class. Mm-hmm. And so if you actually came and sat there and paid attention, you basically had the template from the get-go. Okay, yeah. So we're going to basically just easily go through this. And I think it'd probably be better if you film and I scroll.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Okay.
So what we see here is by this student of mine from... a couple semesters ago, we've got right up here at the top, and for my students, that's called your running head. And the running head, this portion of it is only on the first page. The capital R, running, lowercase h, head with the colon, and then a shortened version of your title, if it's a longer title, in all capital letters at the top, and then a page number in the far right corner. Then, about halfway down the page, you get your title, and the name, which is blacked out, and ECU. All right, so when we move on to the pages after that, you still have a running header, but the actual running head colon portion of it goes away. So this can be actually the trickiest part to doing APA format in a lot of ways, because a lot of times it doesn't like when you put the page numbers in and then you put the header text in. You have to select the option for different first page. And for anyone that wants to go through with this, if there are enough of you that want to do the APA thing, I will make a separate APA video and send you another APA example to follow. That is a docx. This is a PDF file, so you can't just go in and edit it. Unless, of course, you have Adobe Acrobat, then of course you can. All right, so the next page, the second page, is always the abstract, and you always want to have the word abstract on there. And you do not indent your abstract. And generally what this is, I'll be very brief here, this is about a 250 to 250 word, usually closer to 250. Basically, it's just a description of what your paper encompasses. So it's the main goal of the paper, maybe a few details, some key names or phrases, and at the very end, you're looking at keywords, which would be things that, imagine you were going on to Google or to Joiner Library's website and you were searching through the databases. Well, if you were looking for, I don't know, the invention of the potato chip, then you would include words like potatoes, fast food or convenience stores, potato chips, that kind of stuff. So you would have these types of keywords, or say you were looking at the birth of Nintendo. You would look at things like Nintendo, Japan, Zelda, Super Mario, things like that. So these are essentially the words that if somebody searched some of these terms, they would be able to find your paper. Not maybe right away, but your paper would come up in a search of these things. Okay, so it's just basically just a few key things. What I tend to do is look at word frequency. So if you find yourself using a word a lot, that's probably a keyword. So anyway, moving on from that. Okay, so once you get past the second page and you do want to start on a brand new page, and you can see at the top, you've got the all caps shortened title, minus the words running ahead and the colon. Still got our page number. And then we also have our full title. Again, the benefits of gaming applied to soldiers. All right, so this part is the portion that actually comes from the novel. So I'm going to go through the intro and then we'll move on from there. According to Army Sergeant Major Todd Burnett, young soldiers who were raised with Game Boys and spent weekends at the mall lacked the special ability of vision, perception, and instinct to see what was out of place in the environment. And you can see there's his paraphrase citation right there. You have, now remember, in MLA, it's author, then page number with no punctuation. For APA, if it's a written source, it's author's last name, comma, the year, comma, a single P and a period, and then the page number, and then close the citation. Remember, punctuation always goes on the outside. In research, okay, that's a typo. In research done by Daphne Moorer, eyesight can improve by playing high-intensity games such as first-person shooters. There are some typos through this, but I'm pretty lenient with that. And then again, we have here, which is an online source. We have the author, the year of publication, and then here you count from the top the number of paragraphs down to the paragraph that includes the area that you're talking about.
Looks like that.
Exactly. While gaming is not a physical sport and is played indoors, gaming has many benefits when it comes to soldiers. Video games can improve vision, speed up reaction time, make better soldiers, reflect real-life situations, manage health, and much more. Now, I don't love the much more thing there. I think what happened was he ended up writing a lot more than what he thought he was going to and kind of went in some other directions. And rather than having an endless list, when he realized what he had done, that he had gone outside the scope of his thesis, he went back and put that in. Now, it's not perfect, and I took off a point or two for that. But other than that, I think it's a very strong thesis. He very clearly says that not only it's possible that this can do this, but he's going to show you how it does improve these things.
Yep. The only thing that I would say that would really improve this introduction is to establish a very clear audience here, because we don't really know yet who this is intended for. Are we trying to appeal to soldiers? Are we trying to appeal to, commanders in the military? Are we trying to, who are we trying to persuade? That's the only qualm that I have with this introduction. But with my kids, you know how I am. I want that audience established pretty quickly. So that's my only issue with this introduction.
Well, and the option that I gave
The thesis
them,
is really good.
Yeah.
I do agree that the thesis is awesome.
well, and what I sometimes allow students to do if they really want to clarify an audience is I'll allow them to sort of have the thesis, then introduce the audience, and that's actually what he does here.
Which is fine.
So yeah, it's if those of you that know the way that Sarah likes it, follow her. It's just easier for us to do one video. So in the next paragraph, he begins, many politicians and people born before 1975 do not understand or know the benefits of gaming.
So there's our audience establishment, which is fine. I don't have a problem with him doing it here. I prefer it to be in the intro.
Oh yeah, and for me, my only, and I've said this to my students as well, my only thing is make sure it comes early in the paper and make sure it is blatantly obvious who you are writing to. And
Yeah,
both
absolutely.
of these are fine. Both ways are great. I've had many, I still have students do it either way. So the only time gaming is brought up on the news is because of a tragedy someone has committed or because someone is making a ton of money playing video games. The problem with this is that gamers get a bad, like here, this is what I was
Bad
talking
rep.
about. That's not academic language because it looks as if the video games are making people more violent and rich when they aren't doing much. And so again, there we have some vagueness that is kind of reminiscent of the much more up there. So the bones, the bones of this are fine. You know, it's very strong, but that was the one area he was lacking a little bit was, you know, because the way that he actually writes is very varied in its word choice, but every once in a while, you know, and part of that is a generational thing. You know, I'm not saying that it'll ever be acceptable to say, you know, rep or, you know, sup
Legit.
or legit or something like that, you know, but it's also a generational thing to a certain degree. So anyway, as you kind of scroll through this, you can see he does a very good job introducing these quotes and then explaining it leading into the next paraphrase. Now, if you can paraphrase, and this is, I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, paraphrasing shows better understanding of the material than direct quoting.
Yes, absolutely. That is very true.
So if you can paraphrase,
You should paraphrase.
you should. If there is just no better way to say it, or what they're saying is already stripped down to a very blunt and succinct statement, then
quote it.
Then quote it.
But typically speaking, in academia, the typical rule is that you're using research to support your argument, and for that reason you should be able to paraphrase and then relate that information back to your argument. You shouldn't have to rely on a quote, on a direct quote to convey the meaning that you're trying to give. But you know, sometimes you can't avoid it, and sometimes you need to use them for emphasis. You know, especially if a quote is, you know, making a big bombastic statement, like
Or
you know, if this statistic, this is a 10 to 20% higher statistic, right? If that was like a 80 to 90% higher, and you know, then maybe you would want to quote it even more so because it's making a big statement.
Oh, sure. Or if, for example, you know, you were doing something that, like, working on something with the history of civil rights, and Dr. King had made a statement. It needs to be him and his words, not you and your words. Same thing with, you know, George Washington.
Anybody
Lincoln.
notable.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
who's
mean,
like a notable historical feature.
And we all know from rhetorical analysis that adds to your ethos, so you don't want to take that away.
Right.
You know. So anyway, so you can take a look. He goes through, and this was actually quite an extensive paper. He got very, very involved in it. But you can see as he goes through, and when you look through this, you'll see he follows along with the actual thesis that he created. He told us when and where it was going to come, and he follows that up. Now, if you take a look, one thing that he does do that you don't have to, and this was something we went over in class, but it's not correct, but it's certainly not plagiarism. If you take a look right here after this particular paraphrase, he also does a back-to-back paraphrase, which I don't love. So he's taking these from the exact same source, from the exact same place. It's both these authors from 2014, and it's paragraph 11. So if you're paraphrasing multiple things,
You just need the one
you
citation.
just need the one. And also, say, for example, he did a paraphrase here, and then this was a direct quote right there. You would have to cite it twice, but after the first time, you can limit to Greenwich et al. And then,
that's ET space AL period.
And that just basically means Greenwich and everybody else.
It's Latin for and others. So yes, but my advice that I give my students is I would rather see this kind of incorrectness in your citations than not citing enough.
Oh, sure.
You know, my rule of thumb is oversight. If you are in doubt, just go ahead and put a citation down, because it's much better to oversight than to undercite.
So anyway, we'll just move along because I'm not gonna read this to you. You guys have the ability to do that. And as we head towards the end, let's go down to his conclusion. Okay, now for those of you that have me, this is a weird sticking point that I have, and it's not like it loses you points. I think that it's important to let your audience know when you are wrapping up. And with no kind of transitional phrase here at the end, this paragraph right here is the conclusion. I would really like to see at the very bare minimum in conclusion. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but there are many ways to signal that you're doing this, and he does a good job, but I just think it needs to be a little bit more pronounced in a case like this. But you know, if you can come up with a different transition term or something like that, that is fine. One that I would stay away from is wrapping up, you know, or something like that.
Finally is a good word. I use finally in my writing a lot.
With the insight given on this topic, it's obvious this is a term that I didn't like in this paper. It's not obvious to everyone. It's certainly if your audience is the people that didn't grow up with video games, then it's not obvious to them. So that's a little bit of a flaw there in logic. Playing video games has many benefits to soldiers. He has shown that. Video games can improve the overall skills of soldiers by improving vision, speeding reaction time, managing health, and more. So he changed it up a little bit, but that's essentially his thesis statement.
Right. And we want to do that. Want to restate your thesis always.
Absolutely. Video games get a bad rep because of the media and because it's not a physical sport. People don't understand the benefits of gaming and how soldiers can benefit a lot from it. With lots of research being done, it's now known that video games benefit soldiers. Soldiers can use video games to. So here we get a lot of soldier.
It's kind of redundant. It's a lot of benefit too. Benefit. You don't have to say it over and over and over.
Let's see. So let's skip to the end. All of these benefits are possible because of how realistic the games are and how they portray real life scenarios. If you're going to the military or haven't played video games, I suggest you give it a shot. So again, this was another thing that I generally don't like to see is first person
in academic
writing. Now, for certain circumstances, if you are talking about a personal experience that you've had, I do make exceptions for that, but that's rare. So with this one, this kind of felt like he got to the end and kind of bleh, like, you know, I needed to get something out. So a lot of kudos for the format for this, for the citation, for the overall structure, for the tone and word choice for the most part.
It's good.
There are blemishes on this, just like we all do. We all have. But overall, I thought this was a very, very strong effort, especially for the first time that they ever wrote APA. So if you take a look at the references page, we have everything in alphabetical order. Notice that it's references, not works cited because it's APA. We still have our running head. It's on a separate page. So remember, that's another sticking point of mine. Works cited, references, bibliographies need to be on separate pages. All right. So other than that, everything with this was very, very strong. Were there things I would have changed? I'm sure there are things he would have changed given the opportunity. But that's basically, I'll post this along with the link to this video in our announcement. Sarah, I know we'll do it.
Yes, I'll also post this under the Project 3 tab. I'll post this paper, and I'll put the link up as I always do. The one thing that I will say for my students, you know how I am with conclusions. Typically, I want your conclusions to be pretty to the point. I myself, as a professional writer, tend to limit my conclusions to 3 sentences. partially because, you know, you want it to wrap up in what you're saying and to restate that thesis. So this conclusion is a little bit redundant for me. Just try to avoid to not say that. You don't want to say your thesis 4 different times. You don't have to keep rephrasing it. And, you know, that's basically the only other
it was long for me as well. Basically, I'm looking for 3 things. I'm looking for you to restate your thesis, remind us of your audience, and then talk about how it applies to the larger world. Yeah. Or to that audience. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for. If it takes you 3 sentences, great. If it takes you 5 sentences,
that's fine.
That's fine. You know, but any longer than that, your conclusion should be nowhere near as long as your intro.
Right. Absolutely. So that's that. I did want to say, because I meant to say this earlier and I forgot about it. I have seen a lot of plagiarism in Project 2. Not intentional flagrant plagiarism, as in copying and pasting stuff and claiming that it's your writing. But, I mean, papers that had not a single in-text citation, and that kind of thing. You have to cite your work, guys. You have to. You know me. I don't grade harshly for, you know, formatting issues. But straight up plagiarism is you can't do that. If you had a meaner teacher, it would be failing a paper, possibly failing the class because of it. Y'all are freshmen. I try to give you the benefit of the doubt and all that good stuff. But for Project 3, it's going to be you're getting a 0, not on the paper overall, but on that portion of the rubric, which is seriously going to hurt your grade. So please cite things. Please cite. If you are in doubt, cite it anyway. I mean,
if you have a question about, even if you do it, if you're not sure how to do it, please just
make an attempt. It's better if you're not sure that you're formatting it correctly, still make that attempt. It's better for us to see that you're at least trying to cite things right. And we understand that this is difficult. We can't teach this to you in a face-to-face environment, which really sucks. And that's why I'm saying we are being, well, I am, and I know you are too. I can speak for you. We're both being more lenient in our grading because of the current situation with COVID. But you have to cite. You just have to. So please make sure you're doing that in Project 3. And I have one more thing I want to show my students. What were you going to say?
Before... All right, so before she gives you good news, bad news?
Oh, it's not news.
Oh, okay. So, as a special treat, a little bit of niceness and not a very nice time, and I was going to show you a sleeping puppy, but here's a puppy. Well, not a puppy.
She's not a puppy.
Just acts like a puppy. Tessa, say hi.
Okay, guys. I just want to show you where to upload Project 3. That's all. It'll take 2 seconds. All right, so... Well, I got to log back into my thing. It's gonna take more than 2 seconds. I lied. Sorry.
See you, everybody. Be safe.
So when you go into our class, hold on. I'm getting there. I promise I'm getting there. Okay. Go into our class, Project 3 tab, whatever turns up right there. Bam. First thing. Turn in Project 3 here. I want to reiterate, because a couple of you did this, again, even though I had said something about it, you need to have your file saved as either a .docs or as a PDF. If it's a pages or any other kind of file format, I'm not going to be able to grade it because Blackboard can't read those kind of files. So just make sure PDF, .docs, due April 13th.